On his deathbed, the boy whispered, "Mommy, it was him." And what she finds next is shocking. Hi, welcome to another story. If you enjoy it, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications. The phone rang. An ordinary sound, but on that afternoon, it carried a strange weight. Pamela was sitting on the couch, her mind wandering somewhere else. She reached out to answer, slowly, without expecting anything. But as soon as she put the phone to her ear, the voice on the other end cut through everything like a blade. "Your son has been admitted, in serious condition. You need to come now," said the attendant, bluntly, without pause, without explanation. That was all. It was as if the ground disappeared beneath her feet. Pamela stood frozen for a second that felt like hours. Her hand trembled. Her eyes opened wider than necessary. "What do you mean?" She tried to say, but couldn't. The call had already ended. Silence returned, but it was different. The kind of silence that screams inside. She got up so fast she felt her legs wobble. The phone almost slipped from her hand. The house keys fell to the floor. She hurriedly looked for her shoes, forgetting where they were. Her breathing was uneven, and her son's name escaped in whispers. Andrew. Andrew. My God. That was all she could say. Andrew had been under the custody of his father, Ryan, since the separation. A court decision she had never fully accepted. He was her only son. Since birth, he had lived with a chronic condition requiring care, attention, constant vigilance. Pamela had learned over the years to recognize every tiny sign of a crisis. Lips losing color, a slight tremor in his fingers, his breathing changing rhythm. She knew before the doctors did. But now he was far away, and something had happened. Something serious, something grave. When she arrived at the hospital, Pamela rushed in like lightning. She didn't need to ask questions or identify herself. A nurse saw her, immediately stood up and said, "This way, ma'am. Come with me." They hurried down a hallway. The nurse's footsteps echoed. Hers faltered. They reached a door. The nurse opened it. Pamela stepped inside. Andrew was there. So small, so fragile. Intubated. His face pale. His body surrounded by wires, tubes, monitors. Pamela froze for a second. Her vision blurred. The beeping of the heart monitor filled the room. She walked slowly to the bed, pulled up a chair and sat next to him. She reached out, took her son's cold little hand. Then, almost imperceptibly, she felt a squeeze. Weak, but real. "Andrew." "Mommy's here," Pamela said, her voice choked, barely coming out of her throat. The monitor beeped slow, stubborn, insistent. A nurse on the other side of the bed adjusted one of the cables. Pamela looked at him, her eyes red from holding back tears, and asked, almost whispering, "Do you know what happened to my son?" The nurse didn't take his eyes off the screen, but replied with the same coldness as the phone attendant. "A man in humble circumstances. He was dirty, looked drunk. He came in carrying the boy in his arms, left him here and left. Disappeared soon after." Pamela's eyes widened. She didn't respond. She just squeezed her son's hand tighter, and that's when she heard it. "Mommy, it was him," Andrew whispered, almost inaudible. Pamela froze. She looked directly at his face. His eyes were half closed. His mouth barely moved, but the words had been spoken. She heard them. It was him. That was all. Nothing more. Then silence returned. A heavy silence. Cutting. Dense. Pamela didn't answer. She just stayed there, feeling her blood boil. The words hammered inside her head, one after another. It was him. Who? Ryan? The man in humble circumstances? A stranger? Her mind started spinning. Each guess was a punch. Anger grew fast, strong. She didn't know exactly what had happened, but everything seemed wrong. Why did a stranger have to rescue her own son? Where was Ryan at that moment? Was Andrew alone? The thought stuck in her head like a plague. If he was alone, if no one saw the crisis happen, then someone had failed, and she already suspected who. Minutes later, Ryan appeared. His face tired, eyes sunken, hair messy. Pamela saw him come in but said nothing. He approached slowly, his mouth trembling but his tone controlled. "Pamela, I stepped out for just a moment. He was sleeping. I went to get the medicine the doctor prescribed yesterday. When I came back, he was gone. I only found out he was here when they called me." She didn't respond. Ryan continued. "I don't know how. Maybe he woke up on his own, tried to get out. Maybe someone found him collapsed. I don't know. All I know is I had no idea." His words seemed measured, rehearsed, as if every comma had been calculated. Pamela remained silent. She looked at him as one looks at something broken. Ryan tried to justify, but she didn't need an excuse. She needed care, presence, responsibility, and what she saw there was exactly what she had always feared. "You left him alone?" Pamela asked, her voice low but sharp. "For a short time," Ryan replied, looking at the floor. "He was sleeping. I just went to get the medicine. I didn't think he'd wake up. I didn't think—" "You never think. That's the problem," Pamela said, standing up. "You never think about anything, only when it's too late." She left the room, didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't slam the door, just left, carrying the image of her intubated son glued to her chest, and Ryan's confusing words still pounding in her mind. In the hallway, she took a deep breath. She needed to understand. She needed answers. And that phrase wouldn't leave her head. It was him. Who was he? She remembered what the nurse said. A man in humble circumstances, dirty, drunk, desperate. But why would someone like that be there? Why at that exact hour? Why would he rescue Andrew? Something didn't add up. Later, they informed her Andrew would be taken for a series of tests, and that no one could accompany him. Pamela was left alone, sitting. After a few minutes, she stood up. She couldn't just wait. She needed to act. She went to the reception, approached the desk, and said, "I need to see the security cameras. I need to know who brought my son." The attendant replied without looking up, "Ma'am, those images are restricted." "I understand," Pamela said, trying to hold back her impatience. "But he's my son. He was saved by someone. I need to know who it was. Please." "Only with authorization from hospital management." "Then talk to management. Now, please." Pamela's voice wavered between desperation and control. Her eyes shone. The attendant looked at her, then typed something and made a call. She asked Pamela to wait. She walked in circles, pressing her temples, feeling the weight of anguish crushing her chest. 20 minutes passed, or maybe more. Pamela didn't know. Until the attendant called. "You have authorization. Let's go to the security room." Pamela followed her. They entered a small room with monitors on. A security guard was already there, waiting. Without wasting time, she said what she needed to see. He pulled up the files, typed commands, and the video started. The camera showed the entrance, people coming and going, until a man appeared, staggering, wearing old clothes, unkempt beard. In his arms, Andrew. The man passed through the door, looked around, handed the boy to a nurse, and disappeared from the frame. Even with the shaky image, something inside Pamela began to recognize. First the way he walked, then the shoulders, the outline of his face. "Rewind that part," Pamela said, tense. The video repeated. Pamela brought her hand to her mouth, took a step back. Her body leaned against the wall. "It's him," she murmured. "It's John." The guard glanced briefly, confused, but Pamela said nothing more. She knew who he was, and that was enough. John was Ryan's brother, an old ghost, a problem she and her ex-husband had sworn to keep away. He wasn't someone who just disappeared. They knew where he was. They knew he lived on the streets, dirty, unstable, buried in addictions. They knew he slept on sidewalks, begged, drank until passing out. And still, they never thought to look for him. Neither out of pity nor obligation. Pamela hated him, truly, always had. She didn't trust him, didn't forgive him. He represented everything she wanted far from her son. Ryan, in turn, spoke of him with disgust, as if he were a dead weight, a shame the family preferred to pretend never existed. Together, they had agreed. John would never come near Andrew. Never. But now, in that image, in that impossible moment, it was him, John, and he had been the one who saved Andrew. Shortly after leaving the security room, Pamela entered the room where Ryan waited. He was sitting, elbows on knees, head in hands. She stopped in front of him. "It was your brother," Pamela said bluntly. "It was John who saved our son." Ryan slowly lifted his head, his gaze lost. "What?" "John," Pamela repeated. "I saw it on the cameras. It was him, carrying Andrew in his arms, entering the hospital, then disappearing." Ryan didn't respond immediately. He just stared into nothingness, then put his hands on his head, fingers tangled in his hair. He sighed deeply. "John," he murmured. "I didn't even know. I had no idea he was still around." Silence. "He was nearby," Pamela continued, "and for some reason, he came in, took Andrew, and saved him." The two sat in silence, not knowing what to say, not knowing what to do. Shame, shock, doubt, all piled up. There were no excuses, no certainties. But one thing they knew. They needed to find him. They needed to talk to him. But not now. Not while Andrew was still fighting. Together, silently, they decided that the conversation with John would happen later, when Andrew got better. And at that moment, neither knew what would be harder, facing the past or surviving the present. But the present didn't wait. In the following days, what was already hard became unbearable. Andrew's health worsened at a cruel pace. First, the fever returned, high, stubborn, relentless. Then, his vital signs began to drop. Every number on the monitor seemed lower than the last. Pamela spent all her time beside the bed, holding her son's hand, who no longer reacted. The touch was cold. No response. His body, inert, seemed increasingly distant from the life she knew. "Please, stay with me," Pamela whispered, gently squeezing his tiny fingers. "Stay with Mommy, Andrew." Ryan couldn't stop. He paced back and forth in the room, his face worn, expression empty. His eyes didn't settle anywhere. Every time a doctor came in, he stopped, frozen. But the news was always the same, or worse. "We're trying to control the fever, but his body isn't responding as we expected," a doctor said, looking at her clipboard. "He's very weak." "But he was stable. He was getting better," Ryan said, as if trying to convince himself. "Sometimes there are setbacks, sir. The body is fighting. But now we need you to prepare for any scenario." Pamela didn't answer. She just rested her head on the mattress, her face against her son's arm. "Andrew, listen to me, my love," she murmured. "You're not going to leave me. Not now." She had no strength left, no questions, no answers. She was broken, exhausted, empty. Then she did something she never imagined doing, something that had never been part of her. Without thinking, without planning, She began to pray. Quietly, almost voiceless. The words stumbled out, jumbled, confused. It didn't matter. If anyone's out there listening, I don't know. God. The universe. Anything. Please. Save him. Save my son. Ryan stopped pacing. Turned slowly, staring at Pamela kneeling beside the bed. You're praying? He asked, surprised. I don't even know to whom, Pamela replied without lifting her head. But I'm asking. I'm begging. She took a deep breath, eyes closed, and pressed her forehead to the mattress. If he lives, she whispered almost to herself. If he lives, I swear I'll do my part. I'll help John. I'll give him the chance I never gave. But save my son. Silence. Only the sound of monitors and the weight of the promise. Hours later came the first sign, almost invisible. A number on the screen stopped falling, a heart rate that stabilized for a few seconds longer than usual. A nurse noticed and said, "Monitor more stable." No one celebrated, but eyes exchanged tension for hope. Pamela got up slowly, wiped her face with her sleeve, and looked at the panel. "Is this it?" she asked, hopeful. "It's too early to say," the nurse replied. "But it's a good sign." She didn't respond, just knelt again, and kept praying. The next day, more signs, small but steady, a reaction to pain stimulus, a slight movement in his leg. The fever went down a little. Doctors still avoided promises, but their faces were no longer defeated. They were cautious, and Pamela kept praying. With every breath Andrew took, a prayer. With every silence from the staff, a silent plea. At one point, Ryan came over to her, stopped beside the bed, looked at their son and said, "Do you think it was the promise?" Pamela looked at him, surprised. Maybe. Or maybe he's just fighting, like he always has. Days passed. The improvement was slow but steady. Andrew began to regain color. His heartbeat stayed stable. The doctors started talking about gradual recovery. Until one morning, as the sun began to streak the white floor of the room, Andrew opened his eyes. Pamela was asleep sitting up, her head tilted to the side. A soft sigh woke her. She opened her eyes and saw. Andrew was looking at her, his eyes dim, but alive. "Andrew," Pamela said, unbelieving. "Andrew, my love, can you hear me?" He blinked slowly, weak but aware. Pamela cried, like never before. She grabbed his hand, kissed his arm, his face. Ryan entered the room and froze. "What happened?" he asked. Pamela turned, eyes moist. He woke up. Ryan. He woke up. Ryan took small steps forward, looked at his son, then at Pamela. His eyes filled with tears. And for the first time in front of the whole medical team, he cried. They hugged. Long. Silent. It was real. Andrew was stable. Days later, the boy was recovering more steadily. He could sit up, still with difficulty. Spoke little. But he smiled. The worst was over. Pamela didn't forget. The promise was no longer a promise. It was duty. It was answer. It was honor. It was Pamela who took the initiative. She called Ryan into the hallway, away from the room where Andrew was recovering. "It's time," she said. "Time for what?" he asked, frowning. "To find John." Ryan was silent for a few seconds. Took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the floor. Then nodded. "All right." They went together. Learned from acquaintances in the area that he spent nights on a lot near an abandoned warehouse. An improvised place where homeless people built small shelters with cardboard and torn tarps. They went there late in the afternoon, when the light was already fading and the wind blew cold. The path was silent, but Pamela's mind didn't stop. She thought about what she would say, thought about how it would be to see him again, now with different eyes. They walked slowly through debris and shadows until they saw him. John was there, huddled near a dying fire, his face half hidden by the collar of his dirty coat. He looked at the ground as if there was nothing left to see in the world. Pamela stopped for a second, then, without hesitation, walked up to him. Didn't call out, didn't warn, just hugged him. Hard, with both arms. John shrank, surprised, confused. Tried to pull back reflexively, but she wouldn't let him. "Thank you," Pamela said, her voice choked. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." John froze. His body still stiff, as if he didn't know what to do with the gesture. But slowly, his shoulders dropped. The resistance faded. He didn't hug back, but he didn't pull away either. He just stayed there, letting it happen. Ryan watched from afar. After a few seconds, he approached, came up to his brother, stopped in front of him, and extended his hand. John looked, hesitated, then shook it. Long, unhurried. "Thank you, John," Ryan said. John lowered his eyes. His voice was low. "I just wanted to know if he was okay." Ryan nodded silently. There were many questions in the air, but he chose the most important one. "Why did you show up at our house that day?" John took a few seconds before answering. His eyes wandered over the ground, avoiding looking at both of them. "I don't really know. I was wandering, aimless, hungry, cold. I thought about asking for something, anything. Then I stopped near the house. But I don't know why. I didn't even really remember the way. Didn't know if you still lived there." Silence. "But something was pushing me. You know, like I had to go there. Like someone, or something, was guiding me. I felt it. I swear. It wasn't just my head. It was like it was meant to happen." Pamela swallowed hard, her breath short. Ryan said nothing. Then I heard a strange noise. I went in, and he was there, fallen, white, without air. I didn't even think. I just picked him up and ran. Pamela covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes full. It was impossible not to feel it. John continued, now quieter. "I thought they wouldn't even let me in the hospital, but they saw me with him in my arms and opened the door. After that, I left. I couldn't stay. I thought no one would want to see me." Pamela cried again. But it was different. It wasn't sadness. It was something deeper, a recognition that took time to come. But it came. She kept her promise. In the following days, Pamela and Ryan took turns helping John. They started taking him to the hospital for a full checkup. His body was fragile, but there was still time. Patiently, they secured a place in a temporary shelter. Then, Pamela used old contacts to get a simple room in a modest boarding house, clean and safe. John complained about nothing, accepted every help with a dry but sincere "thank you." Never asked for more than they offered. Never demanded. Giving up drinking wasn't immediate. There were relapses, moments of escape. But he came back. Always came back. And each time, he got a little stronger. Pamela visited him often. Sometimes brought food. Other times, just talked. John always asked about Andrew. "How's he doing today?" was the first thing he said. When Pamela felt the time was right, she brought the boy to see his uncle. Andrew was better, walking now, speaking more strongly. The first visit was quiet. They looked at each other. John crouched down, unsure what to say. "Hi, champ," he said. Andrew didn't answer. But he didn't move away either. He just kept looking. Pamela didn't force anything. Neither did John. Time would take care of that. Visits continued. John started coming to Pamela's house little by little, sat with Andrew on the living room carpet, told stories, some silly, some made up, and listened. Always listened. The boy laughed more with each meeting. With all this happening, Pamela started the legal process, gathered medical reports, hospital records, history of neglect, everything. The lawyer filed the petition. The case was fast-tracked due to the severity of the prior situation. Ryan didn't oppose. He was called, appeared, and before the judge, said what needed to be said. I failed. I didn't know how to take care. He needs to be with his mother. The decision came quickly. Pamela regained custody of Andrew. But this time, without war, without dispute, with peace. It wasn't a perfect ending. It never would be. Because life doesn't deliver perfection. But it delivered something better. Truth. It delivered forgiveness. And love. Coming from where no one expected. Andrew lived. And with him, more people could begin again, too. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.